What up, though? This your boy Mo, the socially conscious one, back at you again with another video. If this is your first time stopping by my channel, please hit that subscribe button, and I promise you, I'm gonna hit you up with more fire content. If you're returning to my channel, thank you for the support. Now, what I'm going to talk with you tonight is I'm going to talk with you about that AFC North. I said that the NFC North was the toughest division in the NFL, or inching towards it, excuse me. Well, the AFC North is that division. When it turns of they're them, yes, they're them in terms of being that brutal division in the NFL. Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, all 14 finished with over 500 records, with Baltimore clinching the AFC home field throughout the playoffs. Cleveland, Pittsburgh made a wild card. Baltimore made it to the AFC Championship game. They're the defending AFC North champions. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this tough division. I don't see it dropping off in 2024. Without further ado, let's get started. First off, we had the Baltimore Ravens, and you had John Harbaugh, who is there. He is returning for his 18th season as the head coach, and he is the second longest tenured head coach in the NFL. The first longest tenured head coach in the NFL is also in the same division. I'll get to him in a second. However, you have Lamar Jackson, who is the quarterback, and he returns for a seventh season, and he is coming off a MVP season. Matter of fact, his second MVP. And coming in at the running back position will be Derrick Henry, who the Ravens have signed during the offseason. He replaces J.K. Dobbins, who has signed a contract with the Chargers during the offseason as well. His backup will be Justice Hill, who should be able to step in at the running back two position that Gus Edwards left vacant by also signing with the aforementioned Chargers. In the wide receiver room, they have lost OBJ, but they still have a steady wide receiving core with Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, and Nelson Aguilar. And at the tight end position, Mark Andrews is the top tight end, and he is still one of the best tight ends in the league, especially when he is healthy. The O-line has always been stout when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, and this time is definitely no exception. Led by left tackle Ronnie Staley and center Tyler Linderbaum, this core has been a staple of the recent success that Baltimore has been having in recent seasons. And this year, I can imagine seeing a drop off. Now, let's transition to the defense. The D line for the Ravens, like the O line, is the engine that makes the Ravens defense go. Leader of that D line is Justin Matabuke, and the linebacking core is led by Roquan Smith, and they re-signed Kyle Van Noy during the offseason. In the secondary, you have corner Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton at the safety position, and they signed safety Eddie Jackson, who was waived by the Bears this offseason. Their draft picks include the speedster cornerback from Clemson, Nate Wiggins, Roger Rosengarten, who's an offensive tackle from Washington, and linebacker Adisa Isaac from Penn State. Let's talk about the games. The games include a Week 1 road showdown with the back-to-back Super Bowl champ Chiefs at Arrowhead to kick off the season, and a Week 2 home opener versus the Raiders. Then they travel to Jerry's World Week 3, and they return home for AFC Conference Clash Buffalo on Sunday Night Football. Now the next 4 weeks include a road division game at Cincinnati, home game versus the Commanders, and back-to-back roadies at Tampa Bay, and a road division game at Cleveland. After that, back-to-back home games with the Broncos and the same Bengals. And that is followed by back-to-back road games at Pittsburgh and at LA. With the latter road game will feature a personal showdown between the Harbaugh brothers as John faces his younger brother Jim as he returns back to the NFL after leading Michigan to the Natty. Excuse me. Then they return home for the battle with the Eagles before their bye week. Then they travel to East Rutherford to take on the Giants. In their final three games include a home division clash with the Steelers, a road game at Houston, and a rematch of the divisional round game, And they close out at home versus the Browns. Given their injury history, I personally do not like the makeup of their schedule with the late bye week. Now, having said that, John Harbaugh rarely puts out a bad product, and as long as health isn't an issue, the Ravens should have a positively productive season. How positively productive, you may ask? Stay tuned for my prediction. Up next, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, where you have head coach Dave Taylor. He is returning to be on the sideline. And you have Joe Burrow, who is returning to be the quarterback after his season ended abruptly due to injury. And at the running back position, you have Zach Moss, who was signed this offseason to replace Joe Milton, who was traded to the Texans. And at the wide receiver position, you have arguably one of the best wide receivers in the game today in Jamar Chase. And you have T. Higgins on the other side. And they have lost Tyler Boyd, but they still have Charlie Jones, who is entering his second season. And it's his time for him to step up into that third wide receiver position now that Boyd is gone. At the tight end position, you have Drew Sample. He has a potential upside. Young tight end, I like him a lot. He just signed a 3-year contract extension. He is entering his sixth year. And also, they have signed Mike Gesicki as he was waived from the Patriots. Now let's talk about their O line. Their O line is their X factor. If they can keep Burrow upright, Bengals will be successful this season. Now the D line, although they lost DJ Reader all season to the Lions of free agency, they still returned Sam Hubbard along with Trey Henderson, and they also signed Sheldon Rankins to replace DJ Reader. Not to mention they have drafted Chris Jenkins in the second round out of Michigan to shore up their D line. The linebacker position, Geronimo Pratt returns along with Logan Wilson. And let's talk about the defensive backfield, the secondary. They're returning a young, outstanding corner in Cam Taylor Britt, along with Mike Hilton, Dax Hill, and DJ Turner II. And at the safety position, manning the middle of the field, are Von Bell and Jordan Battle. And aside from Jenkins, their other draft picks include first round pick Amarius Mills, the offensive tackle for Georgia, and the wide receiver out of Alabama, Jermaine Burton. Let's talk about let's talk about the games. Excuse me. The games include a Week 1 home opener versus New England and a Week 2 clash with the Chiefs at Arrowhead, followed by a Week 3 Monday Nighter versus Washington and a battle on the road at Carolina. Their next four games start with the home division tilt with the Ravens and the road game at the Giants, followed by another game north on I-71 in Cleveland to take on the Browns, and then they have back-to-back home games versus Philly in Las Vegas. Then they have another back-to-back road trip away, and they travel to Baltimore to go up against the Ravens, and they head to LA to battle the LA Chargers, and then they return back to Cincy for a bye week before closing out the season with two games versus the Steelers, one at home and the other on the road for the regular season finale. And they have road clashes at Jerry's World versus the Cowboys, and then in Nashville versus the Titans, and home game versus the Broncos and the Browns. Now, like I said before, If Joe Burrow can stay upright and if Joe Burrow can stay healthy, I could definitely see in Cincinnati winning 11 games, 12 games. And I could definitely see them going further than the first week of January. Up next, we have the Cleveland Browns. They are the third team in the division we're going to discuss. And at the head coach position, you have Kevin Stefanski, who is coming off winning head coach of the year for the second time in his career. And you have Deshaun Watson, who, like Joe Burrow, who is returning from injury that abruptly ended his season. He is returning at the quarterback. And when he is healthy, he is one of the better QBs in the league. And that is not up for discussion. Now, the running back position is a little tricky because you have Nick Chubb, and when he is healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the game. But right now, he is currently rehabbing, and he may not see the field on week one during the regular season. However, you do have Jerome Ford. He has shown to be an effective backup. Excuse me. As Chubb continues to rehab, Mr. Ford will continue to get reps at the running back position for the foreseeable future at running back one. Now, let's talk about the wide receivers. The wide receiver core, it features Amari Cooper, who is a top wide receiver in the NFL. And also you have Jerry Judy, who will man the second wide receiver position. And he was acquired in the trade with the Broncos. And also you have second year wide receiver Cedric Tillman. The tight end position, stop me if you have heard this thing before. David Njoku, and he is an elite tight end. The O line is a really solid O line that is led by left guard Joe Batonio and right tackle Jack Conklin. Excuse me. The defense, that is one of the best units in the NFL, if not the best. The edge positions on one side is manned by arguably the best edge rusher in the game in Myles Garrett. And on the other side is Darius Smith, who was signed by the Browns during the offseason. And on that D line, you have Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst II, and Dalvin Tomlinson. The linebackers, Jordan Hicks and Devin Bush, they were both signed during the off season. They go along with Jeremiah Owusu Karamoa, who is coming off of a Pro Bowl season, by the way. And the secondary includes Denzel Ward and Grant Delpit. And they have draft picks include defensive tackle Michael Hall, add to that depth along the D line from OSU, and Zach Zinter from Michigan. He adds depth for the O line. Let's talk about the Browns games. The Browns games are week one home battle against the boys, punk ass Cowboys, and a week two battle at Jacksonville. That's followed by a home tilt in week three versus the Giants. And their next three games are on the road with games at Las Vegas, Washington, and Philly. Then they return home for three games straight. That includes back to back division game versus the Bengals and Ravens. And that is followed by a home game versus the Chargers. Then they will have a bye week. And then they have a road game in New Orleans to face the Saints. Then they come back home to face the Steelers in the divisional matchup. And their final six games include four road games and two home games. Those four road games are at Denver, and then the rest of the road games are against divisional opponents Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Baltimore. And the two home games will be versus the Chiefs and the Dolphins. And when it comes to the Browns, I see them having a really good season. Will they make the playoffs? That's to be determined as the AFC is stacked. Last but certainly not least, you have the Pittsburgh Steelers, where that's home of the longest tenured head coach in the league, Mike Tomlin. And now that Belichick isn't coaching, he is the longest active head coach in the league. And the quarterback is Russell Wilson. He was picked up from waivers as he was released by the Broncos, in which he is replacing Kenny Pickett, who was traded to the Eagles. And they also have acquired Justin Fields from a trade with the Bears for a sixth rounder. Yikes. Well, in the running back, you have Najee Harris, who is running back number one, and he has Jalen Warren backing him up at running back number two. In the wide receivers room will feature George Pickens entering his third year with the Steelers as he takes over the number one wide receiver spot after Pittsburgh traded Deontay Johnson to the Panthers. And they're also returning Calvin Austin III, and they signed Jefferson, in the offseason, and they drafted Roman Wilson from Michigan during the draft. In the tight end position has Pat uh, Fryermuth, and he is a really good tight end, and he is a reliable weapon for anyone who's a quarterback for the Steelers. And also tight end number two is Darnell Washington, who is entering his second season with the Steelers. And you also have Connor Hayward, as that tight end core is pretty solid. And the O line is the only question mark as it has some new faces. And they drafted left tackle Trey Fatano, and they drafted Zach Frazier. And that O line is also returning Broderick Jones and right guard James Daniels, and they have let go of Mason Cole. Defense may be the strong part of the Steelers, partly because of the D line, and the D line that is features Cameron Hayward, and also the linebacker position. You want to talk about linebackers? We have the best linebacker in the game. One of them, at least, is T.J. Watt. And joining Watt in the linebacking core are Patrick Queen, who was signed during the offseason from Baltimore, and they're returning Alex Highsmith as well. The secondary includes Mika Fitzpatrick, and they also include Joey Porter Jr., who is entering his second season. And they also signed Deshaun Elliott, who coming from Miami. Excuse me. Also was signed during the offseason was Cordell Patterson, who's a dangerous return man and should be a vital weapon in the special teams. And their schedule includes back-to-back road games at Atlanta in week 1 and at Denver in week 2. Their week 3 home opener will be hosting the LA Chargers, but have a road game on week 4 in Indy. The next 4 games includes a home game versus the Cowboys week 5, a road game Las Vegas versus the Raiders, and back-to-back home game versus both New York teams, the Jets and the Giants. The Giants game will be a Monday Night Football game. And then they will have a bye week on week 9. And after that, a road trip to the nation's capital for a tilt with the Commanders awaits. Then two Then they have a home divisional showdown versus the Ravens. That that is followed by 2 consecutive road games, both division games at Cleveland and Cincinnati. Then they come back to Acrisure to battle the Browns. Then to close out the year, back-to-back road games at Philly and Baltimore, followed by back-to-back home games versus the Chiefs and the Bengals. Now, after talking about this division, here are my predictions. I see that the Baltimore Ravens will repeat as the AFC North champions, and they will host the home playoff game at M&T Bank Stadium again. And I have them winning around 12 games, 13 games maybe. Next up, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. They'll finish second if Joe Burrow stays healthy, of course. and I have them winning 11 games easily, maybe 12. And I have them going to the wild card, by the way. Next up, I have the Cleveland Browns, and I have them winning 10 games. And I see that if Deshaun Watson stay healthy, that is definitely possible as well. Last but not least, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. They'll win around 9 games. I do expect for all 4 teams to be in to be over 500 again because that is the toughest division in the playoffs. And I do believe in Russ. I do have faith in Russell Wilson. He does have a better OC now in Arthur Smith, but that's just me thinking that. If you agree or you disagree, oh, by the way, before I talk about that, will all the teams make the playoffs again? Who knows? Whether y'all agree or disagree, leave it down in the comment section. If you like this video, hit that like button. And if you like some of the content I put out so far, hit that subscribe button. I'm going to hit you up with more content. Next time, I'm going to hit you up with that AFC South Division. And about to get up on out of here. Peace.